Action is the bridge between dreams and results, and too many people spend their whole lives standing on one side of that bridge, imagining what it would be like to walk across, but never taking the steps that would carry them over. Dreams are wonderful, they are powerful, they give direction and purpose, but by themselves, they don't move the needle. A dream without action is just a fantasy, and fantasies don't pay bills, they don't build businesses, they don't create healthier bodies, they don't strengthen relationships, and they don't make life better. What transforms a dream into something real, tangible, and life-changing is action. Consistent action, daily action, even small action, because the dream may be the spark. But action is the fuel that keeps the fire burning. Think about how easy it is to get lost in dreaming. People love to picture themselves successful, picture themselves wealthy, picture themselves strong and confident, picture themselves free to live on their own terms. There's nothing wrong with that vision. In fact, it's necessary, but if all you ever do is daydream about the future, your life today will remain unchanged. The bridge from where you are to where you want to be does not build itself. Every plank, every step, every nail that holds it together is your decision to act, to move forward, even when it's uncomfortable, even when you don't feel like it, even when nobody is watching or cheering you on. The danger of only dreaming is that it feels good. It gives a false sense of progress. You tell yourself that because you have a big vision, you must be on your way, but unless you are taking specific steps, nothing has shifted. Action requires sweat, energy, and often sacrifice. It demands that you rearrange your schedule, that you push aside excuses, that you make the phone call you don't want to make, that you take the walk when you'd rather sit, that you study when you'd rather sleep. Action asks more of you than dreaming, but it also gives more in return. Because once you act, you can measure progress, you can see change, you can feel momentum. Action is the bridge. And here's the thing about bridges. They are not always comfortable to walk on. Sometimes they sway. Sometimes the path is narrow. Sometimes the other side looks far away, and you wonder if you'll make it. But if you don't take that first step, if you don't begin, you never even give yourself the chance. Progress is built on movement, not on imagination alone. You have to ask yourself, what am I doing right now that moves me across the bridge? Not, what am I dreaming about? It's the doing that separates the achievers from the wishers. When you commit to action, you also build character. You show yourself that your words mean something, that your promises to yourself are valid. You stop being the person who talks about what they'll do someday and start being the person who actually does it. That change in identity is powerful because the more you act, the more you believe in your own ability to act again. And that cycle creates unstoppable confidence. Compounds. One step leads to another. One small win creates the courage for a bigger one, and before long, what was once only a dream begins to take shape in reality.
Don't wait for feelings. Discipline yourself to act, because if you only move when you feel like it, you will rarely move at all. Feelings are temporary. They come and go. They are influenced by sleep, by food, by weather, by the opinions of other people, by circumstances that are often out of your control. Discipline, on the other hand, is steady. It's reliable. It's the decision to move forward regardless of mood, regardless of comfort, regardless of convenience. If you train yourself to wait for the perfect feeling before you take the first step, you'll be waiting forever. The person who makes progress is not the one who feels motivated every day, but the one who has decided that feelings don't get the final vote. Commitment does. It's important to understand that discipline is a muscle, and like any muscle, it grows stronger the more you use it. Each time you act in spite of your feelings, you prove to yourself that you are capable of doing hard things. Every time you show up when you don't feel like it, you add another layer of strength to your character. It doesn't matter how small the act may seem, getting out of bed when it would be easier. To stay under the covers, choosing to read a book instead of wasting hours scrolling, going for a walk when your body whispers for comfort. Those moments matter because they remind you that discipline rules the day, not emotion. Feelings are deceptive. They tell you to take shortcuts, to delay, to avoid the uncomfortable. They whisper excuses like you're too tired, you're too busy, you'll start tomorrow. But discipline answers back, I said I would, so I will. That's the voice that creates greatness. That's the voice that takes the plan on paper and turns it into results in the real world. Discipline is not about being harsh with yourself, it's about being committed enough to do what you said you would do, even when it's inconvenient. If you study anyone who has achieved anything meaningful, you'll notice one common trait: they did not wait for motivation. They didn't always feel like practicing. They didn't always feel like studying. They didn't always feel like making the sacrifice, but they did it anyway. The athlete trains in the rain. The writer works when inspiration is dry. The entrepreneur pushes through when the market is slow. Success doesn't belong to those who always feel good. It belongs to those who have disciplined themselves to act regardless of how they feel. Every time you follow through without relying on feelings, you take control back from the unpredictable ups and downs of mood. You stop being a slave to comfort and become a master of consistency. Discipline frees you because it breaks the cycle of procrastination. Instead of being tossed around by the waves of emotion, you anchor yourself in decision. You wake up, you follow through, you act, and over time you begin to notice that while feelings fade, results remain. The truth is, sometimes the feeling you are waiting for only comes after you act. You may not feel like exercising, but once you finish, the energy arrives. You may not feel like writing, but once the words are on the page, momentum builds. You may not feel like making the call, but once it's done, the weight lifts. That's the paradox. Discipline creates the very feelings you were waiting for. By disciplining yourself to act, you unlock the motivation that hesitation was holding back.
Energy follows. Action, not the other way around. And this is where most people get it backwards. They sit and wait, telling themselves they'll start when they feel ready, when they feel energized, when they feel inspired. But inspiration doesn't just drop out of the sky and fuel you into action. The real secret is that movement creates its own energy. The moment you begin, the moment you take even a small step forward, something shifts inside you. Your body wakes up, your mind sharpens, and suddenly you have more energy than you had before you started. Think about the mornings when you don't feel like getting out of bed. You drag yourself up reluctantly. Your body heavy, your mind foggy, but then you shower, you move, you get dressed, and as the minutes go by, you feel different. Nothing magical happened. You simply started moving, and movement created energy. The same principle applies to every area of life. When you act first, your energy rises to meet the demand. But if you wait until you feel energized before you act, you can waste hours, days, even years, because the spark you're waiting for often doesn't come until after you move. It's easy to underestimate how much potential is hidden in the first small action. Writing the first sentence leads to a page leads to a chapter, and before long, you've created something meaningful. Lacing up your shoes leads to a walk leads to a jog, and suddenly you're building strength. Making one call leads to another, and soon momentum builds into opportunity. Every time you move, you generate more energy, and that energy pushes you to keep going. But if you sit and wait, inertia holds you down, and the longer you stay still, the heavier the weight becomes. Energy is not something you find, it is something you create. And the way you create it is by doing, even when you start small, even when you start tired, even when you start uncertain, the act of beginning flips a switch in your system. It tells your brain and body, we are in motion now, and motion has a way of multiplying itself. That's why successful people are often described as having endless energy. It's not that they were born with it, it's that they know the secret of generating it through consistent action. The mistake many make is waiting for a perfect surge of motivation before they move. They tell themselves, when I feel right, I'll begin. But that moment rarely comes. And in the meantime, life passes by. Energy follows action. So you don't wait for the feeling to begin. You begin to create the feeling. You put yourself in motion. And the momentum carries you further than you thought you could go. The first step may be the hardest, but it's also the most powerful because it unlocks everything that comes after it. If you've ever noticed how hard it is to stop once you're in motion, you've experienced this truth firsthand. You start cleaning one corner of a room, and suddenly you're cleaning the whole house. You start writing a single idea, and suddenly you've filled a page. That surge of energy didn't come before you began. It came because you began, and this principle is universal. The body follows the mind. The mind follows action, and energy is the reward of movement.
Motivation is fleeting. Momentum comes from doing, and that's why so many people struggle to stay consistent. They rely on motivation as if it's a fuel source that will always be available, but motivation is unreliable. It comes in bursts. It shows up when you're excited, when the idea is fresh, when the vision is clear, but then it disappears the moment things get hard, boring, or repetitive. If your entire strategy is to wait until you feel motivated, you'll quit as soon as that spark fades. The real key is momentum, and momentum doesn't come from waiting, it comes from doing. Momentum is the invisible force that makes progress easier as you keep going. At the beginning, starting feels heavy. It's like trying to push a car stuck in neutral. The first push takes the most effort, but once it starts rolling, every step after requires less energy. Action builds momentum the same way. The first workout feels tough. The first call feels uncomfortable. The first attempt feels awkward. But once you push through those beginnings, you gain speed. Every repetition, every effort, every choice compounds, and soon what once felt impossible starts to feel natural. That's the power of momentum. It turns discipline into rhythm, and rhythm into progress. The problem is, too many people confuse motivation with momentum. They think they need motivation to start, but motivation is only a spark. It can light the match, but it cannot keep the fire burning. Momentum is what keeps the fire alive. The only way to build momentum is through consistent action, regardless of how you feel in the moment. That's why small daily steps matter so much more than occasional big bursts of effort. The small steps accumulate, they stack on each other, and they create a flow of progress that begins to carry you forward. Momentum is powerful because it shifts your identity. When you've been taking action consistently, you stop seeing yourself as someone who tries and start seeing yourself as someone who does. That shift builds confidence, and confidence itself creates even more momentum. It's a cycle. Action creates progress. Progress fuels belief. Belief drives more action. Soon you find yourself no longer dependent on fleeting motivation because momentum has taken over. You don't have to push yourself as hard to begin because the movement you've already created is pulling you along. This is why the hardest step will always be the first one. Once you start, you've broken the barrier of inertia, and the more often you start, the less resistance you feel each time. The key is to keep moving long enough for momentum to catch you. Too many people quit before momentum has a chance to show its strength. They do a little, stop, lose the rhythm, and then wonder why they never make progress. Momentum rewards persistence, not hesitation. Motivation is nice, but it is temporary. It can excite you, it can inspire you, but it will not carry you through the long days, the quiet seasons, the challenging stretches where nothing seems to change. Momentum will, and momentum is only built by doing, by showing up, by refusing to let excuses interrupt the process. Once you have momentum, everything becomes easier. The same actions that felt heavy at the beginning start to feel lighter. The work that once required discipline becomes habit, and habit is what sustains success. Build trust with yourself by keeping commitments, because the most important relationship you will ever have is the one you have with you. Every time you make a promise to yourself and then keep it, you strengthen that relationship. You create a sense of inner reliability, a belief that when you say something, it matters, it will be done. On the other hand, every time you break a promise to yourself, every time you set a goal and abandon it, every time you say you will do something and then fail to follow through, you weaken that trust. Slowly, without even noticing, you start believing less in your own words. And when you stop believing in your own words, your confidence begins to erode. Trust is not built overnight, and it is not built with big gestures. It is built in small daily commitments. When you say you will wake up early and you actually do, you strengthen that trust. When you say you will exercise 3 times a week and you keep that promise, you strengthen that trust. When you say you will study for an hour a day and you follow through, you strengthen that trust. It's not about perfection. It's about consistency. Even small actions, when followed through with integrity, create a powerful reputation with yourself. A reputation that says, I can count on me. Most people would never tolerate repeated broken promises from a friend, a partner, or a colleague, yet they allow it with themselves. They shrug it off when they don't follow through, convincing themselves it doesn't matter. But it does matter, because the foundation of self-confidence is self-trust. When you know deep down that you will do what you said you would do, you walk differently, you speak differently, you carry yourself with quiet certainty. That certainty is not built from external praise or validation. It comes from the private victories of keeping your own word. Keeping commitments to yourself also creates clarity. Instead of living in conflict with your own intentions, you live in alignment. You no longer carry the stress of unfinished promises, the guilt of procrastination, or the weight of excuses. You free yourself from the cycle of starting and stopping, because each time you follow through, you close the loop, you complete the task, and you reinforce the belief that you can handle more. Over time, this alignment gives you power, because you are no longer negotiating with yourself, you are simply acting on the standards you've set. The beautiful part is that trust compounds. The more often you keep your word, the stronger that trust becomes. And the stronger that trust becomes, the easier it is to keep your word again. It's a cycle that works in your favor. At first, it may feel difficult to push through the resistance, to honor a commitment when it would be easier to quit, but each victory builds momentum. Each promise kept is like a brick added to the foundation of your character, and over time, that foundation becomes unshakable. When you learn to trust yourself, you no longer need constant external accountability. You no longer depend on others to push you, to remind you, to motivate you. You become your own source of accountability, and that is a level of strength most people never reach. External systems of support are valuable, but they cannot replace the deep inner conviction that comes from knowing you will honor your own commitments no matter what. That kind of trust creates independence, freedom, and a sense of control over your own destiny.
Opportunities don't wait. Hesitation costs progress, and every moment you delay is a moment that may never return. Life moves quickly. The world keeps changing, and the door that is open today may be closed tomorrow. Too many people live with the illusion that they have unlimited time, that they can start when it's convenient, that the chance will still be there when they're finally ready. But the truth is, opportunities are perishable. They have an expiration date, and hesitation often turns potential into regret. The person who acts, even imperfectly, is always ahead of the one who waits for certainty. Hesitation is often disguised as caution, but in reality, it is usually fear. Fear of failure, fear of judgment, fear of discomfort. And while fear holds you still, someone else is moving forward. Someone else is seizing the very opportunity you let pass by. Progress belongs to the bold, not the hesitant. The market rewards speed, the world rewards those who take initiative, and life rewards those who understand that action is better than endless deliberation. You don't have to know every detail. You don't have to see the entire path, but you do have to take the first step when the chance is in front of you. Opportunities rarely announce themselves with perfect clarity. They often show up disguised as challenges, as inconveniences, as risks. If you wait for the moment when everything feels safe and certain, you'll never move. Those who succeed learn to act in uncertainty, to step forward. Even when the outcome isn't guaranteed, they recognize that progress is built not on hesitation, but on motion. A door slightly open may slam shut if you don't walk through it, and too many people spend their lives staring at doors they never had the courage to cross. The cost of hesitation isn't just lost opportunity, it's also lost confidence. Every time you hesitate when you know you should act, you weaken your trust in yourself. You create a pattern of second guessing that robs you of momentum. On the other hand, each time you move quickly, each time you seize a chance, You build courage, you build decisiveness, and you train yourself to trust your instincts. Confidence is not born in stillness. It is born in action. You never know how many chances you truly get. Some opportunities return, but many don't. That conversation you meant to have, that connection you meant to make, that idea you meant to test, they may never come back in the same way. Life is constantly shifting, and hesitation is often the difference between living with excitement or living with regret. The window opens, but it doesn't stay open forever. If you keep telling yourself someday, you risk discovering that someday has already passed you by. There will always be reasons to wait. The timing won't feel right. The resources won't feel enough. The plan won't feel complete. But progress is not about waiting for the perfect moment. It's about making the moment perfect through action. People who achieve extraordinary things are not those who had fewer doubts, but those who refused to let doubt freeze them. They stepped forward, learned along the way, and adjusted as they went. That willingness to move while others hesitate is what separates those who advance from those who remain stuck. When you treat opportunities as precious, you stop hesitating. You recognize the value of time. You recognize the rarity of chances. And you understand that life does not pause for indecision. Hesitation may feel safe in the short term, but in the long run, it costs more than failure ever will. At least failure builds resilience, but hesitation teaches nothing and builds nothing.
Ideas and plans mean nothing without execution, and this is where so many people get stuck. They spend endless hours thinking, preparing, imagining what they could do, mapping out scenarios, and writing down goals. Planning is valuable, no doubt, but without action, it's all wasted effort. A brilliant idea left on paper has no power to change your life. A plan left in a notebook has no power to move you forward. The world doesn't reward potential, it rewards results. And results only come from execution. It's easy to fall in love with ideas because they are safe. They don't carry the risk of failure, they don't demand discomfort, and they allow you to feel productive without actually producing anything. You can brainstorm for weeks, read books, attend seminars, talk about what you'll do one day, but until you execute, nothing happens. The danger is that planning can become a trap. It feels like progress, but it's really procrastination in disguise. Execution requires courage because it brings you face to face with reality, and reality will test whether your idea works or not. Every successful business, every breakthrough invention, every great achievement started as an idea, but it only became real when someone had the discipline to act. Think of all the unwritten books, the unstarted businesses, the unpursued dreams that never saw the light of day simply because someone refused to move beyond the planning stage. Execution is the great divider between those who wish and those who achieve. Two people can have the same idea, but the one who executes will always be the one who reaps the rewards. Execution doesn't have to be perfect to matter. In fact, waiting for perfection is one of the most common reasons people never act. They keep refining, adjusting, and second-guessing, thinking they'll move forward when everything is just right, but nothing will ever be just right. The conditions won't be perfect, the plan won't be flawless, and the timing won't align exactly as you wish. Progress requires that you act anyway, that you take imperfect steps and learn along the way. Execution isn't about getting it right the first time. It's about getting it going and refining as you move. Ideas are abundant. Anyone can think of ways to improve, create, or change something. Execution is rare. That's why those who execute stand out. The marketplace values doers, not dreamers. The person who takes a messy idea and works on it consistently will always surpass the person with the perfect plan that never leaves the page. Execution transforms vision into reality, while unexecuted ideas remain nothing more than mental entertainment. Execution also builds confidence and resilience. Each time you act on a plan, you gain experience. You learn what works, you learn what doesn't, and you adjust. That cycle of trying, failing, improving, and trying again is what sharpens your skills and strengthens your character. Without execution, you remain stuck in theory, and theory alone cannot build strength. Only practice, only action, only execution can. The truth is, execution is the only thing you can truly measure. Ideas cannot be measured, intentions cannot be measured, but actions and results can. When you execute, you give yourself data to work with. You create evidence of progress. You move closer to mastery. Without execution, you are left with wishes and regrets. With execution, even small steps create momentum, and momentum is what transforms an ordinary idea into an extraordinary outcome.
Start small. Start now, but start. Action creates change, and waiting for the perfect moment is the fastest way to waste a lifetime. Too many people delay beginning because they think they need everything lined up, all the answers, all the resources, all the clarity. But progress doesn't require perfection. It requires initiation. The smallest step in the right direction is infinitely more powerful than standing still while you wait for certainty. If you can't take a big leap today, then take a small step, because even the smallest step shifts your direction and begins to create momentum. The power of starting small is often underestimated. People think if they can't do it all at once, then it's not worth doing at all. But every great success story began with something small. The massive tree began as a seed. The successful company began as an idea acted upon in a garage. The athlete who inspires millions began with a single workout. Starting small allows you to overcome the fear of beginning. It lowers the resistance, and it gets you moving. Once you're moving, you can build. Once you're building, you can grow. Growth cannot happen without that initial step, no matter how small it may feel. Starting now is just as important as starting small. The perfect moment doesn't exist. If you keep telling yourself you'll begin when things calm down, when you feel ready, when circumstances align, you will always find another reason to delay. The truth is, conditions rarely line up the way you imagine, and if you wait for that, you'll miss countless opportunities. The only right time to start is the moment you decide, because decision creates commitment, and commitment fuels action. Action then reshapes circumstances in your favor. Life rewards urgency, not hesitation. Starting doesn't mean you need to have it all figured out, but it doesn't mean you need the entire roadmap laid out in detail. It means you take the first visible step, and as you take it, the next step begins to reveal itself. Success is rarely a straight path. It's a series of adjustments made while moving forward. But if you never begin, you never get to experience those adjustments. You never get to learn. You never get to grow. Small starts allow you to learn as you go without overwhelming yourself with the weight of perfection. Action is the catalyst for change. Nothing changes in your life until you act. You can read all the books, attend all the seminars, make all the plans, and talk endlessly about what you want to do, but nothing shifts until you begin. Action creates feedback, feedback creates learning, and learning creates progress. Even mistakes and failures are valuable because they provide lessons that standing still could never teach you. When you start small and start now, you give yourself permission to learn and to grow in real time. The beauty of starting small is that it builds confidence. Each time you complete a small action, you prove to yourself that you are capable. That confidence compounds, making it easier to take bigger steps in the future. You don't need to conquer the mountain in a single day. You need only to take one step, and then another, and then another. Each small action is a brick, and brick by brick, you build the structure of your future. Starting now ensures that the structure begins today rather than remaining a blueprint in your imagination. Action is the great equalizer. It doesn't matter where you start, how much you know, or how far behind you feel. What matters is that you start. Small steps today are worth more than grand intentions tomorrow. Starting small and starting now turns dreams into momentum. And momentum is what transforms possibility into reality.
When it comes down to it, life does not reward hesitation, excuses, or endless waiting. It rewards decisive action. You can dream, you can plan, you can prepare, but unless you move, nothing changes. Every breakthrough, every success, every transformation begins with the courage to act, not tomorrow, not someday, but today. Discipline yourself to step forward even when you don't feel like it. Trust yourself by keeping the promises you make and seize the opportunities while they are in front of you. Because the difference between those who wish and those who achieve is simple. Achievers force themselves to take action, and by doing so, they shape their own destiny.